I'm Steve Walker, standing in the red zone 17 miles from the volcano. Here loggers are busy clearing thousands of acres of fallen trees. A graphic reminder how May 18th, 1980 changed this area's future. In 1 year, a small mountain in Washington state received a public's attention and awe, normally reserved for planets and stars of the universe. The first volcanic eruption in the continental United States in more than a century intrigued and fascinated a country. Pictures allowed a living room record of nature's force and destruction. For most of the nation, the eruption of Mount St. Helens was a year filled with graphic pictures. An estimated 2 million tourists will visit Washington state to take a look at a natural disaster. Tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, and forest fires are transitory. Only a volcano remains for the curious. In the next half hour, we shall look beyond the outer space pictures and examine how people are attempting to rebuild their lives, and those people whose homes will be lost with the next winter flood. The efforts of business to clear over 68,000 acres of fallen trees and then replant the blast zone. The get-rich-quick schemes had never quite succeeded, and the continuing danger of living in the shadow of an active volcano, threatened by flood and forest fire, never knowing when the volcano will once again erupt. The story of Mount St. Helens began on May 18, 1980. 1 year later, it is far from over. Q13 Reports. Mount St. Helens, 1 year later.
His truck with blue poly.
Of Mount St. Helens was Weyerhaeuser, located in Longview, Washington. A pre-tax loss of $66 million, adjusted loss around $36 million. Included in the loss was 16 miles of railroad track, 30 rail cars, 39 crew buses, and a number of logging camps. 14% of Weyerhaeuser's tree farm, about 68,000 acres, was affected by the horizontal blast. All cost of recovery, salvaging, and rebuilding is a Weyerhaeuser expense. What used to be nothing more than just a logging site on a mountain is now listed with the ominous title of Red Zone, a 12-mile state-enforced boundary. It is here in the Red Zone that Weyerhaeuser crews have the exhaustive job of clearing all those thousands of acres of fallen trees, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. It took nearly 4 months for roads to be cleared or built before logging could begin in the Red Zone on September 15, 1980. Weyerhaeuser foreman Carl McCrary remembers his first impression of the Red Zone after the eruption.
It was awesome. You came over here and the only sign of man over here was the path that had been opened up by the bulldozers to open the roads up so we could enter the area with our vehicles to start the logging process rolling. It was one solid mass of gray. There was hardly any sign of mankind other than right where you were standing on the road. As far as you could see, it was a total gray color, all the blown down timber, dead timber. And it was, like I say, it felt like you're standing in the middle of the Sahara Desert trying to begin counting the sand particles.
Between 600 and 700 people are currently salvaging timber in the Red Zone. This 6-man crew is typical, working with a pulley-like contraption called a steel spur yarder. Logs are pulled up the hill 2 and 3 at a time, then loaded onto passing log trucks who take them to the nearest mill. 51 steel yarders are now working in the Red Zone. 400 truckloads, which work out to 3 million board feet of timber, are retrieved from the Red Zone each day. Weyerhaeuser has cleared about 1/3 of the fallen timber in the devastated area, but the work will continue to be painstakingly slow, and they estimate it may be another 2 years before the area is completely clear. Logging is already a hazardous occupation, and clearing the area around Mount St. Helens has increased that hazard. Professional loggers say trees should be cut in a certain way for easy retrieval, but the volcano's blast left huge trees tangled in massive rows, complicating retrieval and increasing the chance of an accident. Then there is the volcano, which is still very active. Loggers say every day the volcano sends off a steam plume and occasional earth tremors can be felt. Mike Bickford, Public Affairs Manager of Southwest Washington for Weyerhaeuser, says evacuation procedures are in place.
There are primary and alternate evacuation routes for all crews. Crew buses, pickup trucks, log trucks have signaling devices in them or radios that can be activated from our Longview Forestry Communication Center. As I mentioned, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week manned operation. We've evacuated, I think, 3 to 4 times during the summer, either on our own decision or an advisory from the sheriff and the USGS. So we're able to do it, and the crew is educated to do that and take the proper steps.
Most of the loggers working in the red zone were satisfied with Weyerhaeuser's safeguards and did not worry about injuries from another Mount St. Helens eruption. But the loggers do have another long-term worry.
What really bothers me the most is the long-term effect that this ash is doing to me that I don't know about. As for the mountain blowing up, they've got all sorts of monitors and stuff up there, and I feel that we're halfway safe for getting out of here.
3 to 5 inches of ash still blanket the area near Mount St. Helens. An ash so fine and abrasive, equipment must be repaired twice as often, and saws must be constantly sharpened. 2 dry days on Mount St. Helens, loggers say they must wear paper masks to protect their lungs from the gray, swirling ash. Weyerhaeuser and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health are conducting a joint study of employees working in the volcanic ash areas to determine short and long-term effects of the ash. Follow-up tests will be conducted sometime this summer. Loggers say they are anxious to know if the ash can have long-term effects on their health. Of the 68,000 acres of fallen timber, nearly half is salvageable, consisting of Douglas fir, hemlock, and other whitewood species. A mild winter allowed sufficient logging to keep the Longview mill running without layoffs. Extremely important for an area where 1 out of every 4 people works for Weyerhaeuser. The sign says, "All sightseers and looters will be shot. Reporters keep out." Another one says, "Looters, shooters, local 3644. Not very friendly signs, but signs that are very common here near the Toutle River. Residents discovered that after the destruction of Mount St. Helens, they had a new problem, and this problem is continuing. People. People who preyed like human jackals on the misery of others, looting homes and property destroyed and damaged by the water and mud. For much of the destruction of Mount St. Helens, for the homes along the Toutle River, was not fire, but water. Water and mud. A mud flow so powerful, homes were buried or picked up and moved hundreds of feet like matchboxes. Residents have moved in with neighbors or friends, leaving behind broken homes that are monuments to nature's fury. From the air, the size and force of the mud flow is awesome, covering thousands of acres. 175 homes were initially destroyed. Erosion and flooding keeps adding to that total. This is the house of Jim Hastings on what is left of Tower Road near Toutle. Jim's $70,000 home is now for sale. Price, $26,000. Potential buyers will find a well-built house close to the river, just a few steps in fact to a 40-foot cliff, and the daily sounds of earth falling in clumps into the river. The Hastings family thought they had survived the eruption and floods with little or no damage. That was until Christmas, 1980.
The roads were all completely washed out. 2 houses went in the river here in this area. And we all evacuated. All the neighbors came in and helped us move out and got our furniture and stuff out. We thought the house was going to go that day because the banks were falling in as we were moving. And the last load I took out down this way, the road washed out behind us. No more roads, no way in, no way out. for a few days until we came back in with cats and punched our own roads back in to get in and out.
Tell me, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the situation here with the house and the erosion and everything else? What do you think your chances are?
0 to nothing. I'm not even, there's no doubt in my mind in November and December when the real heavy winter rains come, I will be wiped out. There's no doubt in my mind. It's just a matter of common sense. There's nothing to stop the river. There's no vegetation, no barriers, no nothing. It'll get us. It nearly got us the last time, and that was a mild winter. Now, we haven't had a hard winter, so there's no doubt in my mind a hard winter will get us.
Jim Hastings is like many homeowners in the area. He watched the rise and fall of the Toutle River with frustration and anger at the government, state, local, and federal. A government, they say, that refuses to help. Yet a government that is already spending millions of dollars to preserve and rebuild the area, and without enough funds to help every individual. For Jim Hastings, his last morbid hope is how his home will be destroyed. Destroyed by floods, and the insurance company will pay. But if erosion causes the house to fall into the river, the Hastings family will be out of luck. And until a new home is built, all they can do is watch and wait.
Where the mountain men all go, it looks like Spirit Lake in summer and in snow. If this is true, Lord, make room for a man. Harry lived and died in this angry mountain land.
Harry's song, sung by Martha and Muriel Belding, is one of dozens of locally produced products that hit the market immediately following the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Many of these unique items are no longer in production, for many of them suffered from small production runs, which made the price simply too high, and many a small company went bankrupt. But where these products failed, other firms are churning out items, all hoping they can make some money. When you drive into Toutle along Spirit Lake Highway, you will see Claire Ottison's attempt to interest the public with her museum and tribute to gritty individualist Harry Truman, including a modest recreation of Harry's bar.
This is one of the whiskey bottles that I purchased that day.
Oh, this is Harry's?
Yes, that was...
He's a whiskey drinker, huh?
Yes, yeah, whiskey and Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little totem pole that was made up there.
Up at his lodge?
Yes,
we made.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is one of the original brochures. And we made up a plaque that says, you know, cabins $3 a day, rowboats.
How old would you say this
50 cents.
is?
Probably 40 years old.
40 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I noticed over here you had some of Harry's clothes?
Yes, except for the John Deere hat belonged to a man that works in Longview, and I called down there where they sell these hats, and he gave me that one because it's used. We wanted a used hat.
Now, did Harry, he liked John Deere hats?
Yes, he bought them there.
Especially John Deere?
Yes, he liked those hats. Mm-hmm.
Curious just about the residents and everything. How are they doing now 1 year later? I mean, this is quite a blow to the community, I'm sure, and affect a lot of people's lives, probably some people you know. How's the area holding up?
I think real good. You know, we're the type of people that, you know, we have a logging background, kind of considered probably a little rough and tough. I think real good. There's some, you know, that cannot adjust to it. There's stress, knowing that you live here and maybe something possibly could still happen. Maybe that's worse than what did happen. And so there's stress living here, and there's stress knowing that there's going to be a lot of tourists here, and our lives, you know, it changed and will change.
Like a scouting party of a huge approaching army, tourists are starting to arrive into Washington State. Estimates range from 2 to 3 million tourists are expected to visit the area around Mount St. Helens this summer. Tourist centers are opening for business. Even Rocky's Volcano flights in Toledo has added extra planes and pilots to serve the expected glut of tourists. Once airborne, it becomes obvious how difficult it will be to try and police these thousands of acres and try to protect the curious and the sightseer. The man with the ultimate responsibility for the area's safety and tourist safety is this man, College County Sheriff Les Nelson.
I would say that
his department and the county worked without sleep after the eruption and had the foresight to develop a volcano plan that informed every resident near Mount St. Helens 25 minutes after the eruption. Although additional deputies and vehicles will be added this summer to patrol the area, Sheriff Nelson has some grave fears.
The fire danger up there this summer, if it's dry at all, is extremely critical. And I think we have to protect people maybe from themselves in the respect of getting back in there and get into a bad fire situation. We've got literally thousands of acres, of course, of down timber. Some of those areas are, maybe the best way to describe it is just oversized Christmas trees that were heat killed. And there they stand with all the needles and the small branches and everything on them. They're thick, they haven't been thinned. They're anywhere from 3 to 10 feet tall. And there's just acres and acres of that kind of wood still sitting on the ground up there. The feeling is, and I only use this descriptively, that in a given situation, that country won't burn, it'll just explode. The heat that it would generate would be terrible.
Various state agencies have met repeatedly throughout 1980, 1981, preparing for the tourist onslaught, and they feel the state is ready.
We do want to see them out. At the same time, we've got to keep them out of that immediate area. If you don't, you're looking at a terrific traffic problem. Winnebagos and logging trucks don't particularly mix well. You're looking at a terrific fire potential. We still have a lot of potential for floods, flash floods in the area. Ongoing search and rescue concerns and problems with a lot of people that aren't used to wilderness areas. The list really does go on, so we feel that a blue zone around the mountain is more of a people control. Certainly there are some volcanic risks there, but I feel we're going to handle it, and I think we're going to do it quite well.
The fear still remains whether the curious will ignore these signs and inadvertently start a devastating forest fire. Over the past year, Mount St. Helens has become a media event, playing a game of cat and mouse behind an almost continual veil of clouds. Weeks of quiet followed by an earth tremor or steam plume. Each time, the press was there to record the mountain's history. The newspaper that won a Pulitzer Prize for its coverage of the eruption and aftermath was not located in Portland or Seattle, but Longview, Washington. The Daily News wrote more than 1,500 stories between July and December. Yet while journalists record the mountain's history, scientists are monitoring the present and trying to foretell the future. The U.S. Geological Service in Vancouver, Washington, along with the University of Washington, takes constant seismic readings, always monitoring the volcano. Prior to the eruption, scientists knew that Mount St. Helens sits in the so-called Ring of Fire, a circle of volcanoes along North and South America through Indonesia and Japan. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, the most active of volcanoes in the Cascade Range, was minor compared with eruptions in the past. The numbers show the cubic kilometers of ash ejected. Indonesia's Tampura volcano killed over 12,000 people and emitted enough ash to cause the year of 1816 to be called the year without a summer. It snowed in New England in June. Did Mount St. Helens change our weather? Fine ash was pushed over 40,000 feet into the troposphere, where fast-moving winds carried the ash cloud east across the continent in about 3 days. In 17 days, it circled the globe. Scientists say an infinitesimal drop in temperature may have resulted, but no significant weather patterns were attributed to the eruption. Geologist Susan Russell Robinson is one of the scientists studying the volcano and assessing what changes have occurred during the past year.
We've seen classic dome building, where the vent of the crater is being filled up or plugged up by a dome complex. The dome has now grown to be 375 feet high, about 1,200 feet wide in the east-west direction, and nearly 2,000 feet long. And the kinds of things we've been seeing throughout the year was the initial pyroclastic eruption, the big ash column, the subsequent eruptions, May 25th, June 12th, July 22nd, August 7th, and October 16th through 18th, where there were major ash eruptions. During those, there have been dome building, but now we're primarily in a quiet dome building stage, but we don't believe that it can continue quiet for much longer.
The future of the volcano is uncertain, yet Mother Nature is beginning to restore life to the desolated area. Flashes of green are appearing amid the rotting timber and layers of ash. The eruption destroyed over 11 million salmon. Silt samples taken from affected nearby rivers show that while ash concentration is high, the fish are returning to spawn, even though experts said it would be impossible. The replanting of the red zone has begun. Weyerhaeuser has planted 6,000 acres. That's 12 million Noble and Douglas fir trees. By 1984, 15 million trees will spread over 37,000 acres. 85% of the seedlings are expected to survive, thanks in part to the careful planting procedure.
These are the types of trees that we're planting here. These are Douglas fir, 2 years old. They were growing in a nursery bed for 2 years. They have a nice fibrous root system, and we feel it will get pretty good survival out of these trees, probably in 85% range, provided we plant them well and take care of them before they go into the ground. Once they're planted like that, the only other thing that we like to have our tree planters do is scalp the ash back from them so that as it rains and continues to erode, it won't fill in around this tree and smother it, basically. So more of this material is moved. And then we create a depression on the lower side of the tree so that it acts as a settling pond for that stuff as it does migrate the ash. And that's the process.
Mother Nature is showing significant growth in an area once described as a war zone. Root systems of many plants and bushes, especially the blackberry bush, survived the eruption and are now in evidence. Vegetation which will assure a return of the animal population. The people near Mount St. Helens share a bond with nature, a determination to rebuild a life in the shadow of a sleeping restless giant. A giant, the scientists say, that could awake at any time. For Q13 Reports, I'm Steve Walker.
Disaster Week continues on Q13 with Earthquake, starring Charlton Heston and Ava Gardner next, followed by San Francisco at 11 here on The New 13.